بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وأعز المرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، اللهم صل عليه وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. Mu'mineen and mu'minat, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts in this holy month of Ramadan, our prayers, our fasting, and acts of charity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the opportunity to increase in taqwa and to preserve whatever we do in this holy month and whatever we achieve in terms of purification and a status in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Preserve it so that we have it with us when we meet our Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. We maintain those statuses and not, God forbid, lose all our savings. Habtul A'mal is a very scary thing that one has to be well aware of and work to prevent it, basically nullification of deeds. In this holy month of Ramadan, we spoke from the beginning of the month, we spoke about purification of the heart and how that is the real meaning of Sawm. Sawmul Qulub, the fasting of the heart, according to Imam Ali alayhi salam, is higher and more significant than the fasting of the body or the tongue. And the fasting of the tongue here, the tongue is not referring to what we eat, rather what we say, the speech, which is Sawmul Lisan, and that is significant, but it's not as significant as the fasting of the heart, obviously. And that itself is less significant or more significant than the fasting of the stomach when it comes to abstaining from a speech that is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making sure that we only speak well. That is Sawmul Lisan. However, when it comes to the Sawmul Qalb, the fasting of the heart, and the level of purification that is intended, and in fact the goal of fasting is, or the mission that we should have of fasting is to get that fasting of the heart. There are levels within that. The very initial level is for one to fight within himself against having bad thoughts and bad intentions. Fight against sinful temptations. If one has a temptation of a sin, they have to fight that. And fighting that itself is part of Sawmul Qalb. Just like Sawmul Batn has a level of fighting against temptation. We get hungry, we want to eat, we get thirsty, we want to drink. Perhaps thirsty is more difficult than the hungry, or affects people more. Nevertheless, we fight against those temptations for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of God, to please God, to make sure that God is pleased with us, and that makes us Sa'im, one who is fasting. Sawmul Qalb is fighting against temptations of sin. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, fasting, Sawmul Qalb is to not have the thoughts of atham, any sinful activity. That is one level of Sawmul Qalb. However, if we achieve that level, which is in fact the greatest action in the month of Ramadan, according to the hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he was asked by Imam Ali alayhi salam, what is the best thing to do in the month of Ramadan? ما أفضل الأعمال في هذا الشهر? He says, الورع عن محارم الله, to abstain from what is disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Stay away from what God has made forbidden, God is displeased with. That is the best thing in the month of Ramadan. In other words, the best level of fasting is when we do not allow ourselves, our hearts, to intend sinful activity. We do not allow our hearts to be tempted by sinful activities. We try to suppress that. And Sawm helps, by the way. Sawm al-Batn here we're referring to. Fasting in terms of the stomach and being hungry helps in terms of being able to fight against temptations. In fact, it is a well-known fact when it comes to certain levels of temptations, physical temptations if you want, for youth, if they're struggling, the best thing to do for them is to fast. You know, it helps them on many levels. It helps them on a physical level, and it helps them on a mental level, and obviously it helps them on a spiritual level to be able to fight against temptations. As-Sawm to prevent certain levels of temptations, of sins, especially when it comes to being attracted to the opposite gender, and perhaps temptations of that regard. Obviously, it's not a sin to be attracted to the opposite gender. It's a sin to allow that to be lustful without a religious, legitimate relationship that is legitimate in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nonetheless, that helps. That Sawm al-Batn helps the Sawm of the heart, Sawm al-Qalb. However, in Sawm al-Qalb we should be striving to reach higher levels. One is to fight against temptations. One is to reach higher levels and be in fact in a state of peace. Al-Nafs al-Mutma'inna, we spoke about it last night. To reach a nafs that is mutma'inna. And nafs that is mutma'inna is at peace. It does not have to fight. Okay? When we're fighting against temptation, there is some sort of a fight. There's no peace. But when we reach a level of radan bi qada'illah, pleasure and satisfaction with whatever God has given and has decreed, at that level, one does not have to be in a battlefield within themselves. There is no, the concept of the angel and the devil, although they say that one angel sitting on one shoulder, the devil sitting on the other shoulder. None of that exists in a physical sense. And in a spiritual sense, you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends angels to inspire us, to advise us, to remind us. And on the other hand, Aduwullah, Iblis, sends his army to whisper to us and deceive us and mislead us, misguide us. So there is a battle in the hearts of some who have allowed shaitan within their hearts, within themselves. And how do they allow it? In the hadith we are told we allow it by sinning. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, every time one of you commits a sin, that sin becomes a dark spot that becomes the gate of shaitan to your heart, or shayateen. The devils are able to enter through that sin, the weak point, the weak link. On the other hand, if you do istighfar, you're wiping away that dark spot and you're blocking the gate to shaitan or shayateen. Istighfar is what helps us fight against shayateen and the devils. Now, Sawm al-Qalb is to help us, and in the month of Ramadan, mind you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us extra help and support. This is why the month of Ramadan is best to purify the heart. Why are we speaking about the purification of the heart in the month of Ramadan? Is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the month of Ramadan helps us against shayateen. In the famous Al-Khutbah Al-Sha'baniyya from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as he was welcoming the month of Ramadan, he told the mu'mineen, he told the Muslim ummah that shayateen are in chains in this month. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts them in chains. Maghlula. Ash-shayateen maghlula. They're in chains, locked up. Now doesn't mean that they cannot do any work at all, or it's harder for them to do work. That's a different story. The assumption is they cannot do any work, or our hope. And the reason why some people wonder how come there are still sins and there are still temptations is because we have another enemy within us. أعدى عدوك نفسك التي بين جنبيك. Your worst enemy is your own nafs if you have not purified it, obviously. Nafsul ammara is an enemy, it's in itself. Even with shayateen being in chains, maghlula, yet nafs still has that, if nafs has not purified, it still deceives us and tempts us. So now in the month of Ramadan, shayateen are in chains, and we are fasting, the physical fasting, abstaining from food and drink, which also gives us strength both physically and mentally against temptations. Physically, it weakens certain temptations. Mentally, it strengthens our ability to think and reflect. I have shared it with mu'mineen and mu'minat. So many people ask me, if somebody has an exam and the fasting is going to make it difficult for them, can they break their fast? I say, if it's really going to make it difficult for them, and it's haraj shadid, and it's not bearable, and they have no choice, and they feel like they cannot deal with it, perhaps if there are no other means, they could break their fast. If it's unbearable kind of haraj, we call it. Nonetheless, the practical examples, and in fact medical research tells us that if you are fasting, if you're hungry, if the stomach is hungry, your mind is brighter. Practical, when I say practical, it's not just me, it is anybody who I've known to be studying and going through exams during the time that they are fasting. They have experienced that, and research tells us, above all that, ahadith tell us how strong the mind is when one is fasting. So in the month of Ramadan, your body is helping you. The physical assistance is the fasting. Mental assistance through the fasting. All of that is there for you, and shayateen are in chains all so that we can gain taqwa. Taqwa is the hearts, is in the hearts. Taqwa al-qulub. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. We fast so that we can gain taqwa. Taqwa from the hearts. Based on what? Based on purification of the heart. Sawm al-qalb. This is why again the Imam emphasizes Sawm al-qalb. And when we reach that level of rida, mutual pleasure with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we reach a level within the heart, we reach a level of contentment, satisfaction, and we reach a level of peace. An-nafs al-mutma'inna, ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses an-nafs al-mutma'inna through its radiyatan mardiyya. The heart is at peace, nafs is mutma'inna. There is no more battle within us. Pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not difficult for one who reaches that level. It is actually a pleasure. Knowing that my beloved wants something from me, I should have no hesitation. And knowing that my beloved is displeased with something, there's no temptation. It doesn't even seem to be beautiful that I have to fight it, because automatically one is not interested or not tempted. Now tonight, in very brief moments that we have, inshallah, a few minutes before iftar, I want us to reflect on another level within the heart and a product of Sawm al-Qalb, which is besides Rada. Rada is one of the products of Sawm al-Qalb, which reaches us to Itmi'nan and Nafs al-Mutma'inna. Another level besides Rada, which helps, in fact, in the journey of purification of the heart, is a heart that is filled with love and mercy. A heart that is resembling the heart of the Prophet of mercy. I began with the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes his messenger as Nabi al-Rahmah, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We sent you nothing but a mercy to the worlds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for his Nabi, for his Prophet, to be rahmatan lil alameen. And a believer, a Muslim, especially a mu'min, a believer who loves the Prophet and his family, should develop a level of mercy and love. Mercy, in fact, is above love, and I'll explain inshallah in the coming nights. A believer should develop a level of mercy that resembles the mercy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is in fact a product of a qalb that is purified. Sawm al-qalb should help us reach a level of love. I want mu'mineen and mu'minat to be with me, inshallah, brothers and sisters, especially if you can bear with me. We have few moments. If you can bear with me the next few minutes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the heart, al-qalb. The purpose of the heart is to be like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The purpose of the heart, and when we speak of the heart, we're not speaking of the muscle. The purpose of the heart is to allow us to be like God. To in fact adapt the attributes, the beautiful attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why He gave us the heart, al-qalb. Al-qalb is capable of beautiful emotions that lead to generosity and kindness. It is the qalb that leads to that. Because you know what, if you are to divide reasoning, al-aql is not necessarily reasoning. If you are to divide reasoning in insan from the qalb, separate it. If you are to separate calculations, reasoning, when you measure things and try and reason between you and yourself, with yourself, would you be able to be generous to others or sacrifice for others with your reasoning? Reasoning tells you what? Put your mask first before you put it. Isn't that what they tell you in the plane? Reasoning tells you save yourself. Reasoning will always put you before anyone else. That's reasoning. But you know what qalb does? And this is why qalbul is praised so much, the heart of a mother is praised so much, is because qalb puts others before you. Qalb allows you to love and sacrifice and have mercy. Qalb allows you to be an insan, a human being. One of the most beautiful attributes of insan is the ability to sacrifice, to love, to have mercy, to sacrifice on a level that is unmatched in the world of creatures, any creature. You cannot find anyone or anything in this world that has the level of love, mercy, care and sacrifice that insan has. You will not find that. And we are more of an insan if we have more care, love, mercy and sacrifice within us, giving within us. If we're able, the more we're able to give, the more we love, the more mercy we have, the more insan we are. the more of a human being we are. And the best insan described in the Quran is rahmatan lil alameen, mercy to the worlds. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of all his attributes that would never finish, even if you were to turn all the oceans into ink and all the trees were to turn into pens, in order to write the beautiful names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will never finish. Out of all of them, in Laylatul Qadr we recite Dua Jawshan. In Dua Jawshan we are mentioning the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, all the beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 1,000 of the beautiful names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in there we mention, and through them we ask Him to protect us and save us from the hellfire, to save us and get us in nearness, qurb to Him, closeness to Him. All these names, out of all of them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose which ones to introduce Himself in the greatest ayah in the Holy Quran. The greatest ayah in the Holy Quran is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is the greatest ayah. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says the enemy targeted the greatest ayah to say it's not from the Quran. The beginning of Fatiha is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You begin the book with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of the God, Allah, the God. Then what? Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I don't want to translate them. Why? Because there are two types of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beyond any translation. Rahman and Rahim are two types of the mercy of God that we cannot translate or describe. It's unlimited. Unlimited from every angle that we can never encompass. It encompasses everything. How can we encompass it? Rahmatika allati wasa'at kulla shay. This is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He gave you and I the heart so that we can have love and mercy. That's why He gave us the heart. And the more we have love and mercy, the more we are like Him. And the closest to Him is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, rahmatan lil alameen. The highest level of the heart is when our heart can have the highest levels of mercy and love available or possible for us. Every individual. Everyone has to be the best version of themselves. The best version of you is the most loving that you can be and the most merciful that you can be. The more you can do and you don't do, you will regret on the day of judgment. The less love you give and that you were capable of giving, and mercy you could have and you could have had for others, and you don't do, you will, wal-'ayadu billah, we will regret on the day of judgment. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fill our hearts with love and mercy for all the ones He loves and has mercy for, and He created through His mercy. We ask Him to make us amongst those who listen to what's said and follow what's best. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma